Hello everybody, you're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. We catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Oak Shed for a weekly album review, and we play local, unsigned and or independent music. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We are repeating on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. And you can also reach out to me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain @wickhamsound.org.uk. I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, people with local arts news, people with MP3s, etc. Don't hesitate to get in touch. So this week we're going to be chatting to author Tracy Fells, but before we do that we're going to head back over to the Rhylight Zone for the latest instalment of Black Solstice. This is a Christmas themed horror story by myself, Dane Cobain. It is available in my collection Scarlet Sins, which is available in paperback and ebook formats on Amazon and wherever all good books are sold, as well as everywhere else. So, Black Solstice by Dane Cobain. I'm keeping my distance, I've got my gun drawn. If he comes any closer I won't shoot to warn. John Lemon and Yoko Ono the vampire is coming. But Satan Claus did exist, and he was having a bad day. His flying hellhounds had got lost over Marseille, and it had taken Adolf's red nose to sniff out the English Channel. It had been raining in Transylvania, but the rain had turned to snow as they flew west in his sleigh. He drew back his fiery whip, a solstice gift from his friend the Balrog, and swung it through the air. It broke the sound barrier with a sonic boom that echoed out over the English countryside. "Now slasher," he cried, "now stabber, now brawler and basher, on killer, on screamer, on pouncer and crasher." And his hellhounds flew on into the darkness. "You scumbag, you friar, no match for vampires." The Rogues featuring Kirsty McBarlow. Just as John Reed was about to doze off for good, he heard a noise from above that sent a chill of fear through his soul. It was the sound of sleigh bells, the horrible funereal gongs that echoed through the sky like a thunderclap. He sat bolt upright in his bed, then shook Mildred into life and put a finger to his lips. "Sapnin," she murmured, still drunk on sleep. "Are you awake?" John asked. "What do you think?" "Yeah," John whispered, "I couldn't sleep either. Did you hear something?" "Like what?" "I thought I heard something on the roof," John said. "I thought it might be, I don't know." "The vampire?" Mildred asked. She'd woken up a little and had pulled herself up so that she was sitting upright too. John reached over to the bedside lamp and clicked it into life. "John, aren't you too old for children's stories? There's no such thing as vampires, husband. There are just people who believe in vampires, and sometimes that's just as bad." "Ah, those guys," John replied. "The ones who get professional fang fittings and who carry out rituals and those guys are idiots, but just because a few fools like to play fancy dress, it doesn't mean that the real things aren't out there." "But vampires, John," Mildred argued. "You're talking about bad guys from the depth of the night, created in the twilight hours before God rested. Lilith, the demon wife of Adam, and her dark lord husband, drinking the blood of children. You can't believe everything you read in the Bible." "I read it on Wikipedia," her husband said. "Did you know that you can find a vampire's grave by leading a virgin boy through a graveyard on the back of a black stallion? Sounds fishy to me, considering vampires can't walk on consecrated ground. They used to bury corpses with lemons in their mouths to stop them from coming back." "Do you know what I read on Wikipedia?" Mildred asked. "In 2006, a physics professor wrote a paper proving that it's mathematically impossible for vampires to exist, thanks to geometric progression. If the first vampire had appeared in January 1600 and fed once per month, turning each of its victims into a vampire, the entire world would have been vampires within 2.5 years. That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" "I think Satan Claus is here," John replied, "and I think he might be coming down the chimney." "Come on, Millie," John insisted. "We might as well go and take a look just to be sure." "Fine." "Should I take the gun?" "No," Mildred replied. "If you do, you'll end up shooting someone." "Yes," John said absently. "That's kind of the point. Last solstice I gave you my neck, but the very next day you went back to heck. This year, to save me from fear, I'm going to hide in heaven." Splat. Satan Claus was coming down the chimney. The front door would have been easier, but that was protected by old magic, a power greater even than he was. He was the Antichrist, the first vampire, and vampires had to be invited over the threshold. He was thirsty, so thirsty, and it was time for his annual feast. Blood was the thing, the delicious nectar of life that sustained him. The blood of virgins was better. The blood of the young was best, for they were free and innocent. They hadn't yet been touched by evil. He worked at night by the light of the moon, chasing it across the sky and returning to his crypt before the first rays of the morning sun filtered over the horizon. The sunlight, along with the warmth that it brought, was deadly. That was why he worked at night. Solstice Eve, and solstice morning until the dawn at least, was the one night of year that he worked. Every year his evil elves delivered a list of who'd been naughty and who'd been nice. He'd work through the list, taking care not to touch the paper against his flaming beard in case it caught light. Then he'd shortlist a dozen names from the top of the good list and carry out basic reconnaissance on the run up to solstice. It was the good little boys and girls who tasted the best. The bad boys and girls tasted like rotten apples and gave him the bloody equivalent of a hangover. And that was how he'd settled on Jesse and Jude Reed. He'd been watching the girls for several months, documenting every decision they made on his diabolical notebook. He tracked their searches on their smart speakers and digitally snooped on them as they ploughed their crops in Farmville or popped bubbles in Candy Crush Saga. He knew more about them than anyone, including their parents. He'd been preparing for this moment for some time, and now he was finally ready. He hit the fire at the bottom of the chimney feet first, but the flames simply fed his desire and regenerated him, leaving him stronger and more determined than ever. He could smell the two girls, and they were ready for him. Satan Claus smiled grimly and climbed out of the fireplace, unfolding himself to his full height in the middle of the Reeds' suburban living room. He was bloated, his stomach distended like a starving child in a charity campaign. Lesser vampires resorted to draining the blood from cattle and sheep, but Satan Claus was a purist. Only the freshest human blood could pass his palate, and he was thirsty. That was the latest instalment of Black Solstice by myself, Dane Cobain. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is Straight 8 with their version of Girl I Wanna Dance With You.
Wearing my very colored in trouble, when I'm in pain. You mend my worries and it keeps me sane. In between the energy, our thoughts are magnified. When you come to see me now, I never act surprised. Telepathic love, unconditional connection. Falling through our hearts remains without detection. The strength you give me is everything I need. It breaks my barriers, it gives me my belief. Your hand guides me on which I feel. You stand beside me, I can succeed. When I'm all alone and all I need is love, you can take me to the heavens above. When I'm confused in the search for more, you remind me of what I'm living for. You stand by me. 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 Everything we know about each other can make us heal. Past lives that instigate our shield. But love breaks down barriers so we can share the time together like we're supposed to. Forever yours and mine. Today we have the power to open up our minds, to get behind the laterals and literally defy how we feel about the future together. We can take the steps to ensure we always treasure the strength you give me is everything I need. It breaks my barriers, it gives me my belief. Your hand guides me on which I feel. You stand beside me, I can succeed. When I'm all alone and all I need is love, you can take me to the heavens above. When I'm confused in the search for more, you remind me of what I'm living for. You stand by me. 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 You stand by me.
That was You Stand By Me by Humans Can't Reboot, and before that we had Straight 8 with Girl I Wanna Dance With You. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain, and it's time for me to be joined in conversation now by this week's guest, who is author Tracy Fells.
The first question is one I ask everybody. I think you'll have a good answer to this because it is more geared towards sort of writers and readers. It's what was the last book that you read and what did you think of it?
Well, I have literally finished a book today, and I'd really like to talk about that. It's actually a short story collection. It's called A Manual for Cleaning Women, which is a brilliant title. And it's by Lucia Berlin. And sadly, I think she's been, no longer with us for over 10 years. And this was collated after her death. She's an American writer, think she's completely unknown in the UK and very underrated in the States. And I've been reading her for several months, actually, just dipping in and reading a short story. And she writes about characters who are really much out of my comfort zone. She lived in Mexico, Chile, had a very traumatic life, serious problems with alcohol, and yet her stories are full of humanity and humor. And it's all about people trapped in poverty and addiction, very visceral, very gritty, sometimes quite tragically heartbreaking, but also at times incredibly funny. I just love spending time with her, and I'm quite sad to have finished the collection, actually. I really enjoyed her voice. So that's what I've literally just finished.
Oh, it sounds like my kind of read as well, because I do like that. Again, I like the sort of, as you say, the sort of the darker stuff, but with a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, I suppose. But you're talking there about short fiction, and obviously short fiction is something you're very well acquainted with yourself as a writer. What is it about short fiction in particular that you enjoy?
Well, I love reading short fiction and I love writing short fiction. And I guess for the same reasons, really, it's the breadth that a short story can cover. You can pick up a short story and be taken anywhere in time, any genre. You can explore so many different worlds, all in miniature. And you can also experiment, I think, with short fiction in reading genres that maybe you wouldn't read as a novel. And you might not want to commit time to reading that genre. And I just love that you can literally, as I say with Lucia Berlin, took me to worlds and characters that are so totally alien to me, but I still relished and enjoyed the journey of learning about them. So I think it's because literally they can just take you absolutely anywhere in time, space. And I think for that, and as I say, that's why I enjoy writing short stories as well as reading them. I read vastly in short fiction as well as novels too.
Cool. And so talking about your writing, how long have you been writing, and how did you get your start?
I guess like many writers, I probably say I've been writing all my life. I was the 6 or 7 year old who, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a writer.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a novel while I was at university, a very dreadful novel, I have to admit. And then life, career, family got in the way for about 20 years. And it wasn't really to my mid 40s that I seriously started writing, which was about 13 years ago. And I just had the headspace, leaving my full-time career, I had the headspace to actually write. Yeah. And how did I get my start, really? I'd already written, again, another dreadful novel. And then I sort of learned how to really write. I read a lot. I entered competitions, and I had to really learn to write, to learn about narrative structure, to learn about point of view. And yes, I really just immersed myself in competition writing to start with, on short stories.
Yeah.
So I've been writing now. I consider myself a full-time professional writer, and 13 years.
Perfect. Well, and you mentioned the sort of the dreadful novel, which I think every writer's got one. But I wondered what are some of the difference that you've noticed yourself between writing short fiction and longer form fiction?
Yeah, I mean I do enjoy both, but they are I guess they're different in certainly with a short story, you're dealing with a much smaller number of characters and possibly theme, and it's almost a bit like under a microscope, you really zoom in to the crux of a story in a short story. Whereas with a novel, obviously, you can have a much bigger cast and explore various themes and subplots. But for me, I guess as a writer, mainly it's the investment of time. You need a lot of love and energy and time to put into a novel. You have to totally commit to it. And though you have that with a short story, it's more of an intense experience. And I think that makes it, for me, certainly more exciting and interesting. And I guess, hopefully, more for the reader too. It can be a very short but immersive experience. And also, I love the fact that with short fiction, you can experiment. And as I say, try all different types of genres that you might not in a novel, for example. I guess for me, I work by setting myself word counts, and I have the same technique for writing long or short fiction. I just have different daily targets to achieve.
Cool. And so obviously I want to chat to you about the naming of moths. So what can you tell us about it? Give us the elevator pitch and a little bit of an insight into how it all came about.
Well, it's my debut short story collection, a collection of some are award-winning short stories. It's 18 stories of myths, monsters, and mothers.
Cool.
And features stories of magical realism, myths and legends reimagined. But it's also stories of the uncanny. Somebody described my writing the other day as weird and wonderful. Adult fairy tales, feminist fables. But for me, my elevator pitch really was its characters who are all undergoing pivotal moments of change and transformation. And the transformation may be actually physical as well as emotional. Transformation of possibly from animals to human to animals. It contains all the type of stories that I particularly love reading. And I think it's certainly a collection of the best of my work, hopefully.
Cool. And where does the title come from? I mean, it makes me think of that there's sort of I guess some similarities between the idea of moths and short stories, with moths being sort of as these short-lived creatures. Are your short stories the moths?
That's actually a good selling point, actually, but it's a lot more Dane than that. It's the title story. There is a story. It's probably my most successful story. So it's the collection is named after a particular story, which is The Naming of Moths. That one, it was a regional winner for the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, which is one of the big prestigious international competitions. And I guess it's a good name for a collection because it conjures up certain images, as you're already saying. But it's actually taken from a particular story, which features the naming of moths, a group of characters who bond by naming moths. It was a lovely story to write because I had to do quite a bit of research on moths, and some of them have the most fabulous, beautiful names.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with Tracy Fells, and this is the MLN Ensemble with Kazushi. was Kazushi by the MLN Ensemble. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be rejoined in conversation now by this week's guest, who is author Tracy Fells.
Cool. It's funny actually. I've been listening recently to Life on Air, which is it's David Attenborough's memoir, and the audiobook is narrated by him as well.
Yes.
But he talks a lot about the various different animals in there, and I've noticed similar things with all kinds of different animals. The way that they acquire their names is is sometimes fascinating, and sometimes it's wrong as well. Like sometimes something will be named as I don't know, it will have the Latin meaning, man-eating tiger or whatever, and it's not. It doesn't eat men. So there are animals with names that are actually incorrect, but they're still very very beautiful names, especially in Latin.
Oh,
cool.
Yes, totally. I mean, that's a really excellent. I think I've got the audiobook for that actually. It is fabulous to listen to. And actually, my first degree was in zoology. You see. So nature, the natural world, occurs in my writing a lot, and I am very fascinated by the derivation of words and names, and that does come up quite a lot in my writing, I must admit. But yes, I mean, the story I think features some beauty, cinnabar. There's some wonderful names of moths. And at one point it's mentioned Phoenix is somebody's favorite moth. And the Phoenix moth is just really very small, dull and brown. So often the moths have these wonderful, beautiful names, and they're the tiniest, dullest little creatures.
Yeah. Cool. And so the collection's out with Fly on the Wall Press, right? What's your experience with them been like so far?
Incredibly positive. I can't say, and I can't give enough praise to Fly on the Wall Press. They're a small indie. I mean, literally, they're a one-woman powerhouse. It's Fly on the Wall was set up, is run by the managing director. She's also the commissioning editor, the editor-in-chief, Isabel Kenyon, and just from the moment I actually submitted. There was an open slot for submissions, and straight away I think I got an acknowledgement thanking me and saying how much she was looking forward to reading it, which honestly you never get. And very quick response within several weeks, and from that moment onwards, when I chatted with her, I felt that we gelled. We both had a love of magical realism, the uncanny, and but also very professional too. Timelines. I mean, I'm a bit sad in that I love it, spreadsheets. I love timelines. I love project plans, and I had all of that. We had a marketing plan. Everything's been very clear as to what was going to happen when. I couldn't ask for a better publisher.
Awesome. Well, and it's good to be organized. And actually, I'm curious now. You mentioned a lot of the competitions that you've written and submitted to. How do you manage that? I'm guessing you have some sort of master spreadsheet with your list of competitions and here's what I submitted and when and things like that. What can you tell us about how you keep tabs on it all?
Yes, totally. I do have I don't enter a lot of competitions at the moment. I've been very focused, obviously, on getting the collection out. But I have a running spreadsheet, which has been running for almost 13 years. I keep track of what competitions are coming up. And I also keep a separate handwritten record of where I'm submitting stories, work, etc. To avoid simultaneous submissions, which can be a bit embarrassing. But I track everything, and I've always done that. And a lot of writers I know do that. But I've also found that I've done talks and workshops on writing for competitions, but also a lot of writers come to me to know what are the best competitions to go for or what's coming up. I guess I've almost got an encyclopedic knowledge of when competitions run as well, many run at same time points during the year.
Yeah.
So you just get that knowledge, yeah.
And I guess you've got a good view as well of what the individual competitions are looking for as well.
Yes, I think you start to be honest. I've had success with certain competitions, but there are others which I haven't. But I'm very I will persevere. I will try and crack a particular competition.
Yeah.
Just to get on the shortlist, etc. But obviously there are judges out there. I mean, I read for several large competitions as well, so that's quite another interesting side of the competition carousel, really, to see what people are submitting and the range of stories. And that's why I like running workshops on helping people to write for competitions, because I also know from the other side what a reader and a judge is looking for or not looking for.
Yeah. Cool. So you mentioned your marketing plan, and short fiction is I think notoriously difficult, certainly to get published outside of presses like Fly on the Wall with like a major press. It's a lot more difficult to get short fiction out there. But you mentioned your marketing plan. How have you gone about launching and promoting the book and getting it out into the hands of readers?
Well, it's been a very a two-way shared process with Fly on the Wall, I have to say. Coming up with ideas of where we could approach for interviews, features, events. Fly on the Wall are very good at their contacts with book bloggers. That's obviously a large, I didn't realize that, to be honest, a large part of the process of getting reviews. And it's, if you've got somebody who's doing that for you and making those contacts and has those contacts, it really helps enormously. Myself, I think I've been approaching writers that I knew, getting people on board to share, obviously, to do reviews, but also to shout about it, share it on X and Insta and Facebook. But it does feel at times, I think, with short fiction that you're preaching to the converted a lot of the time. The audience that you're selling to, they love short fiction because they're short fiction writers, readers, etc.
Yeah.
And to get beyond that is incredibly difficult. I think the publishing industry lacks the champions at the moment for short fiction. You need serious reviewers in the big newspapers, online, etc. The TV book clubs, for example, I'm a huge fan of, but they rarely feature short fiction, for example. And that's sad. We're always being told everyone's got shorter attention spans, and yet the large publishers, of course, it's not cost effective for them, I think, to commit to a short collection unless it's from a really, really big name.
Well, the classic example I give of that when I talk to people about this is Tom Hanks. He had his I think it was called Uncommon Type, and that was his short story collection, and that was published by Random House or whoever it was. And I read it, and it was it was an okay short story collection, especially for a guy you think of as an actor. But at the same time, there's no way that would have been published by that publisher if it hadn't been written by Tom Hanks. So it's a tricky one, I think, for unless it's one of those where unless you are already very famous, that no major publisher is going to take a risk on it. I think maybe the same with poetry as well.
I think sadly for poetry, it's probably far worse. I have a lot of friends in poetry, and again, it's and we should all be cheering for the small indie presses who are struggling. Sadly, they're disappearing all the time because they live so close to the edge. But they are the ones that champion the poets, the short fiction. If you think of some of the, of Moose and Men, for example, excellent indie publisher that has brought some really big names to light. But these wouldn't exist, some of these books wouldn't exist without the small presses. And wherever possible. I think, we need to be championing them and say, please, if you're going to buy lovely Tom Hanks's short story collection, then also please, please go and buy from a small indie press.
Yeah, it's all right. Anyway, I got his book from a charity shop. and you mentioned
I haven't read it.
You mentioned again the idea of championing, and this is one of the things I wanted to ask you. Who are some of the other writers, again, sort of the indie published writers of whatever you want, short fiction, poetry, novels, whatever it might be. But who are some of the indie writers whose work you really admire?
Oh, well, too many. I mean, I certain authors. Alice Fowler, who was launched this year with myself, but Katie Oliver, David Hartley, excellent short story writers, really unusual work. I'm a huge fan of flash fiction. I write a lot of flash fiction. There's a lot of indie writers and presses, ad hoc fiction out of Bristol. But some of my favourite indie writers are Angela Redman, Amanda Huggins. They again are all being published by very small indie presses. In the flash community, there's almost too many to mention, really. And again, the writers who of Moose and Men, some of their novels, too many to mention, really. But there are some incredible writers out there who, if it weren't for the indies, they wouldn't be published.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, and just the last question I want to end on. So what's next for you, and where can people stay up to date and follow you to find out more?
Well, I have a website, tracyfells.com. But I'm on all the social media, on X as the Literary Pig. That's my handle. I'm on Insta, Blue Sky, Facebook, Threads, everywhere. So you can always find me, and I'm always tweeting or posting about what I'm doing, successes, failures, etc. I've talked extensively about short fiction, but my current project actually is a novel. My secret, I guess my guilty pleasure is crime fiction. So I've written a dark, characterful crime mystery, which is set in my home city of Plymouth. Very contemporary story. And I'm on probably second draft. So I'm in the editing phase of that. Which has been keeping me busy for most of this year.
Big thank you to Tracy Fells for joining me. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Lewis Branch with To The River.
Lately I've been feeling kinda low about love. Lately I've been feeling like it's not enough. What happened to the buzz when we used to touch? Where did the magic go that we call love? So take me back to the river, take me back to your love. Take me back to the river, take me back to your heart. Let your love wash over me, it's so clear to see. Take me back to the river, to your heart. Oh, I don't wanna let go of everything we've got. Oh, I don't wanna be the one to say goodbye. But what happened to the buzz when we used to touch? Where did the magic go that we call love? So take me back to the river, take me back to your love. Take me back to the river, take me back to your heart. Let your love wash over me, it's so clear to see. Take me back to the river, take me back to your heart. Take me back and pull me closer. Take me back and be my lover. Take me back and pull me closer. Take me back and be my lover. Take me back and pull me closer. Take me back and be my lover. Take me back and pull me closer, closer. So take me back to the river. Take me back to your love. Take me back to the river. Take me back to your heart. Oh, let your love wash over me. It's so clear to see. Take me back to the river. Take me back to your heart. So take me back to the river. Take me back to your love. Take me back to the river. Take me back to your heart.
That was Sometimes by Charlie Brind, or just Brind as he goes by. And before that we had To the River by Lewis Branch. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Ilkshed now to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review.
Sir John Betjeman, Banana Blush, an LP I bought from the Oxfam Music and Bookshop in Beaconsfield. John Betjeman used to make me feel nostalgic for things that happened before I was born. I am almost unaware of the unfashionable constant rhyming, in the way that I am almost unaware of Tom York's lyrics not rhyming. People say they have a Doctor Who, maybe Baker or Pertwee or even Tennant. I feel that John Betjeman was my poet laureate. He was amusing, he sounded posh, but he was more a man of the people than the serious poets that followed him. They should have followed him with a Liverpool poet or John Cooper Clarke, poets who were also entertainers. Betjeman was a familiar face on TV. His Metroland TV series still lives with me. I hear his clattering cadences as I ride the Metropolitan line from Harrow on the Hill. I was raised in Metroland. I also lived in Slough, made famous by a Betjeman poem long before the Wernham Hog Office. The music on this album is in places a bit like a Sunday tea dance, a brass band in the park, a light classical recital, film music from an Ealing comedy, and orchestral folk rock. While Betjeman speaks of business girls, the Hackney Empire, Finsbury Park, General's Daughters, safety pins, Bootle, Camden Town, the arrest of Oscar Wilde at the Cadogan Hotel, and death. In places he very nearly sings in a Rex Harrison fashion, and he occasionally adopts some very inadequate accents. The album came out in 1974 and was aimed at 70s music fans, people like me. It was on the same record label as Genesis and Monty Python. It is the one instance when the crackle and pop of old uncleaned vinyl actually added to the listening experience. And as I once read in a poem written in reply to Betjeman's Come Friendly Bombs and Fall on Slough, when all's been done and all's been said, Slough is still here and Betjeman is dead. John Betjeman, Banana Blush.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Tracy Fells for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. Thank you to you for listening. As always, you can find us on the Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. It all helps. And if you want to reach out to me here at the studio, you can get hold of me on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So I am going to leave you with one last tune. This is the incredible Frank Birtwhistle with Winter Hill. I'll catch you next week.